You have a sewing machine and you want to make your first quilt, but you don't know where to start. This video is part one of my beginner quilting series, and I'm going to show you how to make a super easy, super quick quilt using 10-inch squares. I'll be teaching you how to chain piece, and in a couple of hours, you will have your quilt top done. In the description box, I will leave a link for part two, where I show you how to baste, quilt, and bind your top. So let's get started. For this project, you're going to need 42 10-inch squares. I'm using leftovers from other projects, but you could definitely also use a layer cake. Just make sure that it has 42 squares in it. Some layer cakes now are only coming with 40 squares, so you might have to add two. But this is going to make a throw size quilt, and it's going to be 6 squares across by 7 squares down. So we're definitely going to need 42 for this particular layout. As you can see, I've got a mixture of lights and darks, and I have matched my squares up to the square that I want to sew it together with. So this blue will go against this darker one, and then this light one against this one, and so on and so forth, so that I don't get mixed up. Sometimes before starting a project, I'll draw up a very quick grid. I like to use these as a reference point so that I know where to place my fabrics and I don't get too lost, because I'm going to be chain piecing this particular project. So I'm going to be working relatively quickly, and I need to keep my wits about me when it comes to fabric placement. So I'm just going to roughly draw out where I want my lights and my darks to be, and hopefully this will keep me on the straight and narrow for this particular project. The piecing method I'm going to be using today is chain piecing. So this is quite a fast method where you sew your pieces together and you don't cut the threads after each section. So I'll be showing you how that works today. And for that particular method, we're going to be sewing in columns. So we're going to be sewing these two pieces together, and then these two, and then these two, and so forth down the column. And then we'll come along and we'll add the third piece to our second piece in each column, all chain pieced. It's a faster way of piecing your project. As you can see over here, I've got my first two columns set out with the fabrics that I want to sew together. So we'll start with our first two pieces and we'll pop them right sides together, and we'll sew these together with a 1/4 inch seam. I need to turn my machine on first. I have to go super slow because the sewing machine makes the camera shake. So this is our first two patches sewn together, and I'm just going to stop here and leave a little bit of fabric out from underneath my needle. I'll take my next two in the sequence and I'll pop them right sides together. And I'm just going to butt these two squares up against these last two squares here. Let me just adjust the camera so that you can see better. Okay, so you can see here that I've stopped a little way before the end of my project. I'm taking my next two pieces and I'm just butting it up. I'm not overlapping. I'm just butting it up against the first two pieces, and I'm going to keep it butted up. And what is going to happen is the feed dogs are going to grab that and they're going to pull it through the machine so that we don't have to stop and cut our threads. And this is going to be the method that I use to piece the rest of this quilt. And I'm just going to continue to do this the whole way down my first column. So this is what your quilt top's going to look like once you've finished sewing the last of your squares together. All we need to do now is just sew the rows together. Our next step is to sew our rows together. So what we'll do is we'll pick up row number 1 and we'll place it right sides together onto row number 2. And as you can probably tell, the chain piecing has helped to keep them together. But what we'll do now is we'll nest our seams, and that means that one seam will be facing to the right and the other seam will be facing to the left, and they kind of lock in place. And this is where I like to start using pins. So we'll go ahead and we'll pin all the way along our first row, and then we'll sew our first row together. When we're pinning our rows and nesting our seams, we want to make sure that every intersection is consistent. So in this case, my seam here is facing to the left. I want to make sure that it's facing to the left at every single intersection that I've pinned across that first row. We're just going to continue that process now, sewing our second row to our third, and again making sure that our seams are nesting. And what we want to do also is just make sure that we don't twist our seams here. So the seam at the intersection is facing to the right, so I'm going to make sure that it's facing to the right at this intersection also, and that the bottom seam is facing to the left. And we're just going to repeat that until we get all of our rows sewn together. Now we can take our top to the iron and press down our seams. As tempting as it is to skip this step, because I know how excited you are to start quilting your project, it's really important that you don't. Pressing down your seams will give you a nice flat quilt for when it comes time to quilt. So taking the time now with that little bit of extra preparation will save you a lot of headaches when you come to quilt your quilt. So I'm just pressing in the direction that we sewed the seam. And I'm pressing and not ironing because we don't want to stretch our fabric. I'm going to press the seams down on the back first, and then I'm going to go ahead and give it a press down on the front. Now you can give yourself a pat on the back because you've just completed your quilt top. Stick around for part 2 where I show you how to baste, quilt and bind. Now that you've finished your project, I'm sure that you have lots of questions for me, so you can pop those in the comment section below. If you've liked this project today, please do subscribe. I have so many more projects that I would love to share with you. So until next time, happy quilting!